Welcome to another episode of the Brainfood podcast. David and I, just before we hit record, we're having a chat about the very catchy title that we've currently got for this episode, Inventing the Keyboard and Mouse. Keep listening, guys, because this is going to be a thriller. No, seriously, it is super interesting, but we do need to come up with a better title by the time this goes to air. Because
definitely,
yeah, Inventing the Keyboard and Mouse is not super catchy.
To be fair, this was the third iteration of topic that I was going for this week, and the others just needed a lot more research. So then I went to this, and then this one needed a lot more research. So I was kind of done coming up with good titles at that point.
It's okay. Well, we'll have something by next week or whenever this ends up going out. I know we recorded a couple of days ago, so we're getting some in the bank, which is nice. Yeah. It's good to be ahead. I feel like I've been, I don't know, we're coming up on the end of September. On our YouTube channel, it's the advertiser time. Like, it's the end of the month. You got to meet those deadlines. It's a pretty intense time. So what have we got coming up then? You know, I assume those two that you gave up on are going to be subsequent episodes, right?
They'll circle back, but it's just unfortunate because I wanted to kind of go in order on the things, and this is going to be a little bit out of order, but that's all right.
Are we starting a series? Because we did Macabre, Burke and Hare, the guys who were stealing bodies, well, killing people, then they didn't steal any bodies. They literally, stealing was not part of their crimes. Murder and selling bodies was part of their crimes. Then we talked about Shrunken Heads. What did we do last week? I already forgot. It was only on Fridays, 4 days ago.
Yeah, that was the lady serial killer, the nurse, the nightmare nurse.
What was her name? Happy Jane or Jolly Jane, later rebranded.
Yeah, Jolly Jane and Jane Toppin.
Yeah, that's right. So we're leaving Macabre behind. I'm quite happy to leave Macabre behind. The Shrunken Heads one was a bit much.
Yeah, me too. Although the Burke and Hare has been really popular, and so is the other ones shooting up as well. So apparently we should come back to that at some point.
More talk about boiling people's flesh heads.
What's worse is that when you have to spend sometimes days on end researching, people eating other people and the various cases, it's not a good time. Not good.
No, I can imagine. And I don't know, like, when you put that picture, in a way, I'm kind of glad the podcast medium is non-visual, because there's that picture of Jeremy Bentham's all weird, shrunken, nasty, moldy head. Yeah, no, that was enough for me. And you must have had to look at many pictures of Jeremy Bentham's shrunken, moldy head.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I think the worst was the when we did the other day a video on the cannibals. Oh, can you actually get in trouble? Is it illegal to eat someone else? And
oh, dude, and there was the one about the dude eating the penis. I remember this when it was in the news.
That was the worst. I just was like, yep, that's enough. I think I even put that in the script. I was like, if you want to read the more details, that's you go right
Feel
ahead.
Feel free to Google that.
I'm going to stop talking about that and move on.
So we're leaving Macabre behind, and we're talking, we're starting a tech series, right? And we're starting with the invention of the keyboard and the mouse.
Yeah,
or whatever we decide to call this.
The QWERTY layout, like how did that come to be? And the quite interesting story of the mouse and the presentation that it was sort of debuted at, which was pretty amazing. I believe it was the mother of all
demos.
Yeah, which it totally was.
I'm familiar with this before we did the podcast. I'm not sure if we did a video about it, but this is an insane. Like, when was that? The 60s or the 70s?
Yeah, it was exactly. And, before you had these personal computers and everything, and they had just the stuff they came up with. I mean, a lot of it wouldn't even be expanded upon till like the 1990s, basically.
Dude, some of the stuff in there, I feel like we only really got within the last decade. Like, the collaborative working on documents at the same time without conflict. Yeah. That's still a problem we have.
Yeah, I mean, it was around, but as far as widespread use and all this, but we'll get to that.
So, we switched up the structure a few episodes ago. Are we doing quick fact, then the main stuff, and then follow up afterwards? I'm looking at the quick fact now. Has this got anything to do with keyboards and mice?
No, it doesn't. It was, originally it was supposed to be a quick fact on Data's, the Star Trek character Data, his memory storage capacity, and then the sort of comparing it to the internet. But unfortunately, when I researched that one originally was like 2012, so much has changed since then. So I was like, I'm going to scrap that because I didn't have the time to go look and try to find out how much data is downloaded on the internet every day today. So we substituted it in for something completely different, which is fitting. Is confitting because it's a Monty Python fact.
How does that fit?
The now for something completely different.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. And so this one is on Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And it turns out that we have Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Genesis, and Elton John largely to thank for that great, great movie. Do you like this movie? You've seen it?
I don't think I've ever seen it all the way through.
You're killing me.
No, I mean, I've seen bits of it.
You didn't like it?
I feel it's one of those movies. I mean, it's all over YouTube. So I think I've sat down to watch it. It's been like, I've seen everything, just in individual YouTube clips. Yeah. But I don't know, I'm going to draw a lot of flack, and I know I'm going to draw a lot of flack from our British listeners, but it's not as funny as everyone says it is.
See, I think it's quite hilarious, but yeah, I know a lot of people who think it's stupid. But
yeah, I mean, and I like British humor, and I think it's a bit. Do
you like their sketch shows and stuff, their little skits and stuff beyond the movie?
Yeah, enough, but I'd much rather watch some Mitchell and Webb or something. I just think it's, I don't know if maybe it's because that's a bit more modern, it's a bit less dated, but then everyone's like, it's timeless. And I'm like, I disagree. Right, there we go. Yeah, now everyone's turning off this podcast. Been like, not listening to this British idiot. He doesn't even like that thing that everyone likes about Britain.
Yeah.
Okay, so why do we have to thank Pink Floyd or whoever it was?
And Elton John and Genesis.
Yeah.
It turns out they funded 40% of the movie. And we have from director Terry Gilliam, he states why.
I will read the quote in just a second. You know what else is funny? I don't really like any of those bands either. Genesis is all right, but Elton John, Pink Floyd, The Wall by Pink Floyd is the biggest turd of an album I've ever heard. I can't stand that nonsense, and it upsets me. I'm sorry.
It's
Led Zeppelin. Bad.
Led Zeppelin, almost everything they did was amazing.
I don't really know Led Zeppelin. I'm not really sure I've listened to them. I'm not a big rock fan, this harder side of rock. God, everyone's going to hate me now. I'm just going to move on. Well, I do love Star Trek. Yay! Not the original series. That sucked. They're going to be, Simon, I liked you when you didn't have opinions. Anyway, here we go. He stated, there was no studio interference because there was no studio. None of them would give us any money. This was at a time when income tax was running as high as 90%, so we turned to rock stars for finance. They all had money, they knew our work, and we seemed like a good tax write-off. Except, of course, we weren't. It was like the producers. Never seen the producers either. Oh, God. Is the producers a musical?
Actually, I have not seen the producers either.
God. Okay, good.
Yeah. I know it's considered something of a classic, but yeah.
Income tax at one point got as high as 98% in the UK.
That is insane.
It's insane, right? Everyone left.
It's just like make any extra money and you just give it all to the government. That's it. You don't get any of it.
It was like a super tax, so it was only for the richest of the rich. And then it's okay. So I was thinking about this, and I'd be like, if I was in their position, I'd be like, I'm just going to stop working. But then the people in this position are like the Beatles or Genesis. And it's like, they're not going to stop working. And arguably, if I was in like a 98% tax bracket, I'd be like, I'm not really going to stop working because I don't just do it for the money. And also I'll take my 2% over nothing. But I also screw that.
That's a bit high. I think almost anyone would agree that's a little excessive.
Yeah, just a touch.
Yeah, so it was an ultra low budget. These rock stars basically contributed about £80,000, which is about £600,000 today in today's money, and that was about 40% of the budget, as I said there. But this extreme low budget was one of the reasons I think this movie was so great. Because, for instance, did you know have you at least seen the part at the where they're going around with the little coconuts?
With the horses and the clapping with the coconuts or whatever?
Yeah, they originally were actually supposed to have horses, but they couldn't afford them. And so they just came up with the idea of having the little, assistant riding along or hopping along beside doing the little, clippity-clop sounds with the coconuts, which is, one of the best. It's just that opening scene where he's just coming over in the mist, King Arthur's coming and then...
Yeah, it's all right.
It sets the tone for the whole movie, I think. Yeah, it's great. So yeah, that it ended up, the movie obviously was a huge hit. It made about £3 million, which about 19 million pounds today. On its initial run, and then it's been pretty much a moneymaker ever since. So all off a budget.
those rock stars, they'll be like, we made a profit. Damn it.
I'll go into the government.
90% of it goes back to the government.
Yeah. But apparently this worked out so well. The Beatles, George Harrison, he actually funded £3 million he put forward to make Monty Python's next film, The Life of Brian. And just to quote him on why, it's just because he said he wanted to see the movie.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he did well though, right? That second film was just as successful.
Yeah, it was huge as well. £15 million, which is about 69 million pounds today. But of course, as you said, it all went to the government.
Wow. That's crazy though. That's George Harrison, just like, I want to see the movie. I'm super rich. I can do whatever I want.
This is the same as Howard Hughes when he basically wanted Netflix in the 1960s or whatever it was.
Where he buys the TV station and he phones them up and he's like, I'm bored of this movie. Change the movie.
Yeah, and he just wanted them to show the movies he wanted to watch when he wanted to watch them. It was great.
This is amazing. This is like one of my favorite things because it just so highlights how awesome life is today. Because literally, you had to be as rich as Howard Hughes in the 1960s to have anything even halfway close to Netflix and realistically much worse. And now it's what, $6, $7 a month, and you can see any movie you want pretty much anytime. And
basically anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Like, even like flying over the ocean in an airliner, you can still stream your movies if you like.
Yeah.
Just crazy.
And then it's like, oh, and we're also streaming low-budget TV or whatever, which looks better than any movie that was made before 1960.
Yeah. Do you know what else you can stream while flying over the ocean? Any of your files using Backblaze.
Oh, you can. So if you're over the ocean and you've suddenly realized you need some of the data that you've lost in a crisis, Backblaze, today's sponsor. That was smooth, man. Did you? Well done. So my feeling with Backblaze, we're kind of going off script already here. I was taken aback by your incredibly smooth, transition. So Backblaze, did you recommend this to me? Because I was using this for like a solid couple of years before.
I did, because you had so many video files that we needed backed up. And I was like, dude, Backblaze, $5 a month. That's it. They will back, terabytes of data for $5 a month.
And I feel it's even cheaper than $5 a month. Isn't it like $50 a year?
Yeah, that's true. You can get your annual plan.
It's not even $5 a month. And this was around the same time that, do you remember when we've talked about this previously on the podcast, and it's kind of gets a bit meta because it's like, with the advertiser and everything. But we were on that $10 a month plan for the podcast, and they were like, guys, now it's $300 a month because your downloads got big. And this was when we did our previous podcast, which was completely different. And then I was like, wait, but Backblaze let me back up everything for $5 a month. And I was like, I don't know. This doesn't seem quite right. So I went to check it out. It's like, nope, totally unlimited backup. $50 a year.
I have something like 14 terabytes that they back up presently for $5 a month, which is just, I do feel like it, like I've gotten in trouble from my internet provider over this, over that. But, when I'm like, 1 or 2 terabytes or something, because, I work online, do online video, I do a lot of streaming and all this. So like Backblaze is like, no, we will store all that data for $5.
It's pretty nuts, right? Like, 12 terabytes is insane. I actually put a note here being like, should we talk about how much we use Backblaze? Because it feels a little bit abusive. And then
it does. But it's a good edge case because, most people aren't going to back up that much. But we do online video, so we have a ton of stuff to back up. So
the most amazing thing for me, I do want to hit some of the actual talking points here. Otherwise, they'll have a go at us. But before we had Backblaze, I was kind of like, backup's not really a hassle because I didn't do any backing up. I just was like, touch the plastic wood that is my desk and hope that everything will be okay. I've never really had any major issues, which is great. But so I never really did any backup. And then I realized that was pretty insane because like losing the last 3 months of videos would just literally be hundreds of hours of work that I have to do again. But there's no hassle with Backblaze. You install that app, you select which drives you want to back up. So for me, I was just like, chink, 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 all of the drives, which are many. And then you just you press, or whatever it's called, the backup now button, and you just let it run. And I let it run for days and days and days and days. And then it's done. And all of your terabytes of data are backed up. And now it's like, so I will record, like in a day, I produce about 40 to 50 gigabytes of data. And then that just runs overnight. And then I've got very fast internet. And I come in the morning and it's like, It's done. It's all on the cloud. You're safe.
And it works quite seamlessly. Like when you are using your computer, it does not slow down your internet. It just kind of pauses, they're uploading and whatnot.
Although that's that's the default setting.
Oh, okay.
You can get it to slow your internet to a crawl, which is an amazing thing. Because at night, I'm like, use as many internet threads as you can and go nuts and make my internet so slow it barely works because I want all of that data pushed as fast as possible. But for regular people, you can just set it on like the small mode so it just trickles up there, which is probably best. But I love that ability because I like the control.
I think it also ramps up a little bit, when you're not using it, but I'm not sure. Yeah, it does have the you can set the maximums and minimums and all this in the settings. Cool. But yeah. Yeah, this is something, I have also used for, I don't know, like for probably like 8 to 10 years, I feel like. Maybe, I can't even remember really. I've been using it for a long time because it's just a steal of a deal.
It's glorious. I don't really know what else. Oh, go on.
They also do, this is just outside of their service, if you're just interested. They're kind of pushing the limits of data storage, in ways that like Amazon and Google and stuff do as well. But the difference is Backblaze publishes these sort of reports on data and how to make a data server, super cheap and like all this stuff on like, some cool like research stuff that they publish that a lot of companies don't. And it's just all open, and they even publish open source their designs for their servers that they've come up with and what hard drives to buy if you want to make your own.
I was pretty super interested. I think they published a blog post or something about the drive failure rates.
Yeah.
And like how often they have to replace them and all of this stuff. And how like, when we talk about backup, it's not like they've got a copy as well. It's like they must have multiple copies of our stuff. And so,
and use various algorithms. They also use various algorithms and different tricks to make it so they can, not have to store every little bit, but can kind of like, put it across different things to conserve data and compression and all this. And so, they got a lot of cool papers, like, like blog posts, like you say, that they just put up, and they're quite interesting to read, I think.
Look, we love Backblaze. We've used Backblaze for long before Backblaze were paying us to say that we love Backblaze.
We reached out to them and we pestered them for a long time to be like, hey, you should definitely sponsor us because we love your service.
If you're not sure, go do a 15-day trial. It's also $50 a year. Just go get it. I mean, it's $50. It's awesome. You won't regret it. It's just super easy. Don't let it be one of those things you're like, I should back up my stuff. Don't be like Simon for years. Backblaze.com/brainfood. That helps support the show. All of that good stuff. Again, backblaze.com/brainfood. Just go there, check it out. It's great. Main content. That's next. Are we moving on to the keyboard part? We probably should.
Yeah, we definitely should. And that.
Speaking of computing, it's like a wide transition.
Yeah. So we're going to start with the keyboard. Why is it this QWERTY keyboard layout? Like, how long has this been around? And it turns out
people down, right? That's the classic. Like, I feel the internet, every fact site will be like, QWERTY, it was there to slow people down because they type too fast.
That is a thing. That is a myth that has come up, but no, it really wasn't. It was actually to make sort of an efficient design. But to begin this, we have to kind of go actually back to the typewriter and the very earliest, the first commercially successful typewriter. This is kind of the interesting thing. It goes all the way back to the beginning, this layout, and then just everyone's been using it ever since. So it turns out there has been typewriter-like devices since about the 18th century, and kind of different things that have popped up, but none of them were ever commercially successful or anything. They were just kind of little inventions different people have. And I think the first one, which was the 18th century one, was, I don't think the inventor guy actually made it. He just patented it like a design, but never actually constructed the thing itself. But this brings
like
us
the original Steve Jobs.
Yeah. So we go to the 19th century, the sort of a mid 19th century, and when Christopher Latham Scholes, and with the help of several other people, he came up with this idea for a typewriter, and his first one was 1868. And this initial design was, you can literally just think of a piano keyboard, where it's got the little black keys and the main keys, and this is exactly what he went with. And it was just, everything was in alphabetical order across the keys, and it was just kind of this 2-level thing. And this is what he came out with, and it was specifically kind of targeting telegraph operators and stuff, used similar devices to this. But in his case, this one, it just kind of like a classic typewriter. It had the little bars that kind of swing up when you press the key, and then, hit a little ink-coated tape thing that then smacks against the paper. And then here you go, you got your letter has typed. But the problem was this was quite not a good design because it turns out some of the keys were really close to each other. And when you hit them really fast together, like the TH or whatever, it would, the way he had it laid out in the two levels, they would kind of jam sometimes if you did it with any speed at all.
Because often TH like there, then it often
exactly.
comes together. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and the way it was on the two rows of the keyboard, they've just, this was one of the problems with this. There was other problems as well, but this was kind of the main mechanical problem, which first seems to have spurred him to change his design. And I know at this point, there are people out there right now listening to me like, no, that's a myth. And it's like, no, it is not a myth. It's so in 2011, there was a paper that came out. It's called On the Prehistory of QWERTY. And it was by Koichi Yasoka and Motoko Yasoka. I don't know.
Sure, why not? But it's definitely the same name, isn't it?
Either way, of Kyoto University. And they basically purported that this was a complete myth. And instead, they suggested that it was actually, he was taking input from the telegraph operators to kind of change his design. And that's how he came up with what spurred the change. And this is, I mean, there's elements of truth to this, but it's not actually the whole part of that being a myth does not seem to be the case. In that paper that they published, which has been widely cited around the internet, even by the Smithsonian Magazine, which usually they do a better job at research than that. So
come on, Smithsonian.
Everybody gets stuff wrong sometimes, though. So yeah, so this has been parroted around, and now you'll often read that, no, that's a myth. And it turns out, so in the paper, they say that idea of the jamming came up in the 1980s. And it turns out, no, that idea actually came up in 1923 in the history of the typewriter by the Herkimer Historical Society put this book together. And they very clearly had access to Scholl's notes and his various correspondence and stuff. And this is how they came up with their, a lot of their primary research for what they said. And they are the ones who said specifically that, no, it was the jamming problem that sort of spurred him. And then, yes, they also mention that he did take input then when he was looking at changes from the telegraph operators on how he might change the design to then work. So there, I mean, there's elements of truth to what's said in the 2011 paper, but the way they present it, they didn't know any of this, and they kind of just presented the jamming was a myth, and then they give speculation on why they think it was actually this other thing. So they kind of got the second part right, inadvertently.
Hold on, I'm a little confused. There was, it was because of jamming. People said it wasn't because of jamming. Turns out it actually is because of jamming.
Yes, and then, but also the point of this paper, this 2011 paper on the prehistory of QWERTY, was that they were speculating that he was actually, the various design tweaks he did was just because of telegraph operators' feedback, and so that's what he was doing. And it turns out they got that part right. They just didn't know. They clearly had never read, like this 1923 book or the various notes and letters that the Scholl's, actually his notes and letters are still around. You can go down to the State Archives of Madison, Wisconsin and go read them, which I have not done yet. So I'm more going off this 1923 book, which did have access to them. So, it might be kind of interesting to actually go back and read through those and see if you can dig up some extra stuff on that at some point. But for now...
Normally when I hear people citing papers, that means it's been published in some sort of academic journal, yeah? This seems a bit sloppy. Because...
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine paper. It's well written and all that. And, the research, could have been deeper, I suppose, but...
Well, your research for this podcast seems to have turned up errors in their academic paper. And that makes me think you could have done, come on.
I don't know.
Am I judging too harshly here?
I mean,
if it's an article in a magazine, sure, we'll allow mistakes. But if you've been published...
The fact that they didn't have, some of these notes, they clearly didn't read this, where in the history of the typewriter book, they say that Scholl's actually said, yes, he took input from these people. And so they didn't have that. So they were just kind of looking at kind of the changes that were made. And so it was kind of an interesting, little hypothesis they came up with based on the changes that they saw, and said, no, I bet you there was telegraph operators because of the way, they worked and the way they did stuff. And so, there was some cleverness about it, but yeah, it's just, but these are possibly just two students, might even be undergrad or something, writing a paper for something. I don't know.
Yeah, but someone reviewed that paper and put it in a journal.
Yeah. A lot of stuff gets published, but anyways.
It's true. I mean, it's just because then the problem is then it leads to people like Smithsonian publishing it. It was Smithsonian Magazine publishing it. And then people see Smithsonian Magazine citing an academic paper, and you're locked in as fact. No need to question that further.
No need to even go back and read the paper.
No, so you just trust that. And then it leads to these myths that you get on lots of different
but then
websites.
It also leads to us having a job.
True. Yes, that's a good one. Yeah. I'll take it. Carry on.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, there's, that seems to be the case that there was actually initially a jamming problem that was one of the primary causes of the change. But whatever the case, so he makes this design, sells some, doesn't sell particularly well or anything, limited sales. But then he teams up with Remington, who in the Civil War were making weapons and stuff, and now they were kind of moving on to other things now that the war was over. And so they decided to team up and produce the Remington #1 typewriter, which was based on a design he came up with in 1872, which was a little bit more similar to what we would think of as the keyboard layout and the typical typewriter. This one still did not sell particularly well, and it wasn't quite yet in the QWERTY. It was very close to the QWERTY we have now. If anyone wants to just Google the image of it, you can see kind of the layout. Very similar, but not quite. But then 4 years later, or I should say actually in 1878, I think it was. I didn't write it down for some reason, but I think it was 1878. He made some slight modifications again, and this was the Remington #2, and this one had the QWERTY layout, the main keyboard part anyway. Obviously, some of the symbols and stuff were a little different, but
no hashtags.
But the main, I don't know. Let me look.
What did they call it back in the day? The Octothorpe, I think it was.
Yeah, the Octothorpe. No, I'm not seeing any hashtags, just numbers. And let me see if I can find a bigger view of this thing.
It'd be useless for Twitter.
Yeah.
Have you seen these hipster devices, which is like an old keyboard that someone's converted into a device that you can slot an iPad into the top of and then use that as a keyboard for your iPad?
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a maximum hipster.
Yeah, no, this appears to have the numbers, the letters, and then one thing it does have here is the shift key, and that's noticeable. Like, have you ever wondered why is the shift key called a shift key? Why does that make something capital?
I don't know. Let me guess. Shift it, but then it's like you'd shift it to the next thing, like to the next row of characters, but that doesn't really answer the question why.
No, you're kind of on the right track. So you think about this: when you press the A, that little bar flips up and smacks the little ink tape thing and puts the A right. And so, but if you want that A to be a capital A now, what if you just put the capital A on the same bar and then you just hit the shift key, which moves the whole thing up or down, depending on how you want to design it. And then now all of a sudden when it flips up, now it's going with that other, the capital or the lowercase, depending on whether the shift key is pressed. So it literally just shifts the entire bar up or down, depending on how you want to do it. And this is what it did to just shift. And then of course this got carried over to computers, even though nothing is actually being shifted, but we still call it the shift to just, make it capital letters, which is.
There you go. And they still write shift on keyboards.
Yeah.
Feel like handy. I'm looking at mine right now. It's like shift. Yep. Also, we should do a follow-up. What the hell does alt green mean? Like
alt green?
Like, you've got alt on the left. I've wondered this for a long time. It's one of those things I should probably Google but never have. Look at your keyboard. Alt on the left, right? And then on the right, you've got something that says alt GR.
I don't have that.
You don't have that? Shit, is this a British thing? Or like
maybe it is.
European thing? I'm going to follow up on that because I think it stands for alt green. And I have no idea what that means. Because, alt means alternate, right? So...
Yeah. And, computers is my thing. So I've never seen that before. So that it's got to be like a not US thing, at least, at the minimum.
Maybe it doesn't mean alt green. I'm Googling right. Yeah. Yeah, there's an alt GR key.
Interesting.
I'm just doing a Wikipedia on this one. So use similar to shift key. Some computer keyboards. I'm going to follow up on this. I need more information. Yeah. Stay tuned to next week's episode for a fun follow-up about the alt green key, which you probably didn't care about because your keyboard probably doesn't have it.
I'm quite interested now. I've never seen this.
Wow, there you go. No, I'm looking at a US international keyboard layout, which is the one... Well, I always think the US one is where there's the @ symbol above the 2, which is not European. And I'm looking at it right now, and there's an alt GR on the bottom right-hand side.
I've never seen this.
Yep.
Maybe I have in like an old keyboard design and I just don't remember. Alt graph or alt right.
Alt right? It's just for the alt right?
Or alt graph. It's a modifier key found on some computer keyboards and is primarily used to type characters that are unusual for the locale of the keyboard layout, such as currency symbols and letters. I could see this being a more handy thing in Europe where you're constantly maybe referencing other, currencies and things.
That's true. I am looking at it now, and it does gives you access to the symbols above like the I don't know, in Traktor, the charka, it's like a symbol above a letter, or like the umlaut, these things.
Huh. Yeah.
There you go. Fun times.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing he doesn't have an alt green key on his Remington 2 or whatever
I don't.
he was on by now.
See any such thing. There doesn't really, So just the basic symbols too. But this Remington number 2 was the model that sort of set the standard. Obviously, it sold quite well. Within about a decade, it had sold over 100,000 units. And not only that, what helped this as well was that they also offered certification in their keyboard, which was quite popular with businesses and stuff. And so if you were a typist, you could get certification, training from them they obviously set the fee really low because they wanted everyone to use it. And so you could get certification, and then you could go to a business and be like, hey, I'm certified typist in this Remington number 2. And so they could, help you get a job. And so this became extremely popular. And then shortly thereafter, what was it, in 1893? 1893, the Remington and basically the 4 other top typewriter makers in the country all merged into one giant typewriter, making company. And they just set the standard. The industry standard became the QWERTY from then on. And it was already, basically the standard because of how many Remington number 2s there were out there and everyone using it.
That sounds like it would be fully illegal today. The 4 biggest companies in the world just decide to get together and corner the market.
Yeah, but it works out for the keyboard. And then there was a standard, which was quite handy. And I should go back, not only some of his motivation for the way he laid out the keyboard, it was to sort of simultaneously, he was taking input from like telegraph operators and stuff like that on kind of where they might like things laid out. And then also he did some research on looking at sort of what might be a good, combination of letters, like where to put them to make it, a little bit faster to type, while also considering to keep the type bars, so they wouldn't be overlapping so much. So like, keep them, mechanically far away from each other for letters that were frequently used together. So it kind of helped with the jamming issue, along with some other tweaks in the design. And so this was all kind of his motivation there. And that is there's not really a lot of notes on exactly, more detail than that, how he specifically decided where each letter would go. But he continued, even after the Remington number 2, he continued to tweak the design to try to get it better and, faster to type words and stuff. But that, everything past the Remington number 2, his designs, they just stopped, people just stuck with that one because it was pretty good. And it's basically been pretty good ever since. And this brings us to one of the primary alternatives, of course, is the Dvorak keyboard, which I know you've tried. You've tried.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was a horrible experience. And I was
how long did you give it?
Like a day. Well, it's just like this. I don't know. I don't know why I ended up trying this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember my reasoning, but I was kind of like, I do spend a lot of time typing. I think maybe this was before I was just insanely busy, because the idea of me doing this now is just absurd. I just be like, no, you crazy? I don't have time for that.
No.
To get like a 2% incremental gain. And then I think you told me it doesn't actually make a difference. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, it doesn't. It turns out, it makes a minor difference, but it's so minor that you would never really notice. Like, definitely the speed of your thought for most people is probably going to be more the thing, unless you're just, a typist who's really going for every extra word per minute. But it turns out, as we'll get into momentarily, it doesn't really make that much of a difference as far as speed, if you're just considering speed.
Someone I know is a stenographer.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Their speed is insane. It's like, people will be saying stuff and it's like they know what they're saying.
Yeah, well, they have those special keyboards as well.
Oh, yeah.
The shortcuts and stuff, which, that's
pretty cool.
That's the way to go if you want real speed.
Until they get the machine that can read my mind.
Yeah. So it was Professor August Dvorak from Washington State University in the 1930s. He basically wanted to make something that was better than the QWERTY, just a little, to be more efficient. And he had some great ideas for how to make this happen. And if you look at his ideas, you can definitely see why it seems like it should be a lot faster. So he's basically he wants to do, the 5 most commonly used consonants. He wants it on the home row and all the vowels, because these are going to be, so 2 things are going to happen there. One, you don't really have to shift from the home row very much for a lot of the things you're typing. And 2, you're going to be alternating. So if you have the vowels on the left side and these consonants on the right, you're going to be alternating quite a bit just by the nature of the way words are. And so you can very quickly, go back and forth. And, this seems like it would be a great idea. Seems like it would work. And this was his main point was to try to minimize the movement that your fingers are doing. So kind of the distance traveled. So you're just kind of pressing down a lot more than you are, going up and down with the fingers. And this it turns out around 400 of the most commonly used English words can then be typed just using this home row, compared to the QWERTY keyboards of this sort of list of most commonly used words. Only about 100 in English can be typed only using the home row. And so it seems like, in theory, this should be quite a bit faster. So yeah, the initial test with Dvorak was quite promising. In conjunction with the Navy in 1944, he did it, and what they found was, I think they used 14 typists in the test sample. And these initial tests, they found a 74% increase in speed, words per minute, and 68% fewer typos, basically. And so this seems quite promising. And then a little later, some other studies came out that basically said the opposite and said, no, this doesn't actually increase anything. And so, yeah, this has become a little bit of a religious debate between the pro Dvorak people and the QWERTY people. And so it's they all kind of discount each other's studies and like, no, that was, faked or whatever. And it turns out this is just a hard thing to measure too, even if you're really trying to come up with genuine results. Because if you think about it, so you take a sample of, QWERTY keyboardists, people are quite proficient in it, but what was their training, initially, and are they doing it the most efficiently that you can do it? And if they aren't, which a lot of people aren't, like I, for instance, type with 3 fingers on each hand, even though this is I never use the pinky. I guess I use my thumbs, so that counts for the space bar. But yeah, so this...
Wait, you're supposed to use the thumbs for something else?
Well, I mean, you can use thumbs for... I was just saying the thumbs is, use it for, the out key. And
oh, okay. Yeah, gotcha. I was like... I thought you were saying you were using the thumbs wrong by just using the space bar. I'm like, wait, so I'm like perched above the keyboard?
No, but you're supposed to have like formal training, right? And this is something I just learned to type doing video games, like the Quest for Glory, which we covered before and stuff like that. So, I'm quite fast typer, but this is the way a lot of people learn, and they learn in correct techniques. And so then when those people, it turns out, go and then use the Dvorak, so they actually, for the first time in their lives, actually, in a regimented way, type the way they're supposed to type, sort of train, then you do see a massive increase in speed because now you're doing it correctly. But it turns out then when you go back to those people and get them to use the QWERTY and actually do proper training to retrain themselves, they also see a huge increase in speed. And it turns out the Dvorak, when you kind of aggregate all the different studies and things that have been done, which are surprisingly many, it seems like the Dvorak gives you about a 2% to 10% increase in words per minute. And there's also a lot of claim that it will reduce your errors, but that seems to be more mixed reviews on that one. As far as that, it seems like what more happens, a lot of people note, is that you stop doing like a random wrong letter error, and what ends up happening is you often, just kind of do inverted letters. So, or, they kind of go in the wrong order. So when you meant it, like if you're saying you might do HTE instead. That sort of typo pops up more often.
I don't even know if I have these anymore because it just autocorrects that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
These days.
That's true.
My most frustrating one is correcting your name to Maven. Like, hey, Maven. No, it's David, not Maven. So if you ever read Maven, that's what's going on.
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of the thing. So a lot of the people who are looking at and say, no, I got a way bigger improvement. It's often just the case that it seems to be that they, weren't doing the QWERTY right. And if they just took proper time to train in the QWERTY, they would also see a huge increase. And so the problem is there's a lot of subjectivity in this, how skilled was the people that you're doing these tests on in the first place with the QWERTY and stuff. So there's actually been some studies that tried to get around this problem by taking the humans out of the thing.
This is where I was going to say, surely we can get computers to do this, right? Or like artificial intelligence. I saw a guy program a thing that, that when you load Google Chrome and the website doesn't load and you have the jumping dinosaur?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, I saw a guy program fairly quickly, like a machine that learned how to play this game. And I was like, that's amazing. And all I'm thinking is like, surely we can like figure this out.
Yeah, this is exactly what, and my favorite of these was there's a study in January of 2006 by one Catherine Hempstock, which of University of Waikato in, I think it's New Zealand. Anyway, she did a great study. It was called The Great Keyboard Debate, QWERTY versus Dvorak. And she basically decided, all right, so we know the time it takes for your finger to move up or down is going to be, we can actually look at this and see, typists, proficient typists, how much time. It's not going to vary that much. We can get the average time to, to go up and to the side or up and, this sort of thing. And so she kind of took these averages. How much time does it take to press a key for the average keyboardist, very proficient keyboardist? She took all these times.
You need the artificial intelligence, apparently.
Yeah, well, she gets to that. Not artificial intelligence, but you can just add. So then she took 21 quite lengthy books, such as Moby Dick and, this sort of things. And then just, how long?
Read it. Never read Moby Dick.
yeah. So then...
In the theme of today's episode, things that Simon really should have read and seen, but never has.
Yeah. Yeah. So then just how, it's easy then to add up how much time would it take for the Dvorak keyboard to do this? And how much time would it take for the typical QWERTY typist to do that, given the average these averages time to type these works? And so, in a nutshell, she has rather lengthy conclusion with a lot of data and stuff, hard points. But basically, it was just that no, there really wasn't that big of a difference. And it turns out some seem to there for some cases you'll actually favor the QWERTY, and other the Dvorak. And then she sort of, but yeah, either way, it doesn't really make any difference. And she sums up the whole things by stating,
the Dvorak layout is the most efficient because it requires the least amount of effort to type some given text, even though it may take approximately the same amount of time as the QWERTY layout.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but who really gets tired typing?
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I burned an extra 3 calories.
Yeah.
After a year.
I have when you're really trying to type fast, and for a long time, just as fast as you can think, then yeah, I've had your wrist start to get a little, but that is so rare. And I'm at my keyboard all the time typing things. So even for me, that's a pretty rare occurrence. Yeah. But that is as the intended sort of goal of his was to minimize the movements, the travel distance of the fingers. And he definitely achieved that, but it turns out it just doesn't translate to that much faster typing, even in this study here. So you're really not going to get much bang for your buck, which of course, when you have such an established thing like this, you're going to need something that's just revolutionary, so much better for everyone to switch. Otherwise, companies are going to be like, no, we're not going to spend the money to retrain and all that. So, so then we're kind of stuck with the QWERTY, but there is other reasons, not just speed, beyond that to go for the Dvorak. Just like we just said, the fatigue factor. Some people do claim for their use cases it does help their wrists and their forearms and stuff not get so tired as they're typing. But then, of course, yeah, there's the 1 to 6 months or whatever to get super proficient in the Dvorak, depending on how much hours per day you want to devote to the switch. I did read there was one guy who did both. He did at work, he did the QWERTY, and then at home, he did the Dvorak. And then he said it actually was not hard once he became proficient in the Dvorak as well to just switch. And his brain had no problem switching. It was the biggest drawback to this, though, is that the shortcut keys, everyone says the shortcut keys, especially if you're a computer programmer or programming in C, for instance, a lot of where the symbols are is also a huge issue. On the Dvorak keyboard, when you make that switch, it's just really not well placed. And then the shortcut keys, because they're all geared for the QWERTY to be really, easy reach for the QWERTY, but not necessarily for the Dvorak. So this is another key complaint that a lot of Dvorak advocates, they note is kind of the annoying thing. But there are scripts and stuff you can install that will sort of restore the old shortcut, even though you're using the Dvorak.
Yeah, I'd kind of whatever the X is or the C or the V for cut, copy and paste. I'd want, I don't care if it's Control X or Control P. Yeah. That's cool. I just would like it where it was before because it's in a nice row. You can just be Control C, Control V, easy.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what they do. You can install these, or you can just go with the really, awkwardly placed things. But yeah, so at the end of the day, if it's only going to be a marginal increase, you're not going to see the widespread switch.
So this is the thing. When I tried to switch to it or just experimented for a day, and then you were like, no, it doesn't really make a difference. And it's so frustrating. I think everyone has had this experience, a similar experience. When you go to the airport or wherever, and it's you use one of those touchscreen computers to punch in your name or your boarding code or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then for some unfathomable reason, they've done it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, in a big block on the screen. It's who designs this? I want to end you. Like, because it's like, no one is wanting to do an alphabetical thing. The only people that would want this are old people who've never used a computer. But then they've used typewriters, so no one wants this. And it's this level of frustration where you're like, oh God, I know the alphabet, but where's W again? It's somewhere near the end.
Yeah. And there is there's some argument to be made for switching to, like, so on a phone, to using not a QWERTY layout, though. So you're using just your thumbs. And so, I mean, certainly there's got to be more efficient keyboard layouts.
Dude, that was the 90s.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Well, yeah, but like everyone still uses the QWERTY on your phones, Like
think about it. Texting on like a phone from the 90s, it was A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And each key had like 3 letters. It wasn't QWERTY.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying like nowadays it's all QWERTY, but there's probably a better layout for if you're just using your thumbs. There's probably got to be some sort of a better layout out there. And I know people have been trying to develop such, but that might be something where someone could come up with something that's just so different and so much better that it actually sticks at some point. But we'll see. But there's also, like the alphabet. So this got me thinking about the alphabet. The letter Q, the letter X, and the letter C are completely pointless, and we could just get rid of them. There's no use of them.
What about when I want to talk about xylophones?
Z or Z.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I was really worried because I put a lot of xylophone talk planned for later in this episode.
And C can be substituted with the K and the S for any uses there. And and pretty much Q is what, like QU always, but you could just, W, KW. This all works. We really don't need these letters if we really wanted to be ultra efficient. But of course, no one's ever gonna get rid of those because they've been around. And same as the QWERTY keyboard.
I mean, I'm thinking about it because in Czech, which is a language I half speak as well, like W is really not used. It exists in the language, but it's not really ever coming up.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird.
That is weird.
Okay, let's eliminate some Q. Is pointless in English. Yeah, that's for sure.
And X and C. I was trying to think if there was others, but I couldn't.
Why do we have W? Can't we just use 2 V's? Because it is like W.
Well, but then you still got to have a way to make the sound, right? The w.
Yeah.
So how would you do that otherwise? I mean, I guess you kind of do it with the Y and an A a little bit, maybe. If you
so how would you do
them.
questions like with this
K, and then a W? Just the K, all the Q, all the QU, all the QUs could be just KW.
Years. For the years after these are eliminated, everyone's going to be writing like an idiot.
Yeah.
I got a question, KWE.
That would look pretty funny.
Like, do you have prime minister's, or I don't know, obviously you don't have prime minister's question time, but do you have this thing where it's like a program, like, or not a program, like a parliamentary thing where people will ask questions of the prime minister. It'd be like prime minister's question time with a KW.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was
question. Where were we? We got off topic.
So we will sum up this whole section by a quote from Dr. Dvorak himself.
Changing the keyboard format is like proposing to reverse the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule, discard every moral principle, and ridicule motherhood. Well, there we have Dr. Dvorak.
Yeah, he wasn't bitter at all.
No, clearly not. He couldn't just leave it at like reversing the 10 Commandments. He had to throw in the other 3 things as well, just because. There we go. Did he do anything else? I feel like he must have done something else.
Not that
did we make a video about him doing some stuff?
I'm sure maybe biographics or something. I've not looked into his full biography.
Speaking of biographics, there's another channel. Go check it out. That's a plug. I was thinking that we should do more plugs for the other stuff that we both do in these podcasts because we're quite universally terrible at that.
Yeah.
Are we moving on to the mouse? Is this episode we're going to hit both of these?
We're going to hit them both.
Do it.
Yeah. So now moving on to computer mice. How did this come about?
Mm-hmm.
You'll often hear that it's Doug Engelbart he's the inventor of the mouse, but this is not. It's kind of accurate, but not quite. Of course, is all this. Any invention, you always, there's the person who gets credit for it, and then there's all the people who made something really similar beforehand that, that wasn't the path for the thing to become popular. And so they don't really get credit, even though they came up with,
Are you going to say the amazing phrase you put in here? because you write in the notes, nothing happens in a vacuum. And I thought this is an amazing callback to our episode about space and what happens to people if they're put in a vacuum. Yeah. Go back and listen to our previous episode about that.
Yeah, that is true. That's a good one. I always find that one quite fascinating because it's quite the opposite of what you see on movies and stuff. So teaser.
It's still not good though. It's not, it's not the opposite. No. It's not the exact opposite. It'd be like you put in a vacuum and you become awesome. It's not. It's not that.
Yeah, but surprisingly survivable
for a long time. Wasn't it like 90 seconds or something?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wow.
And possibly even longer, a little longer. Some of the chimpanzees lasted longer. But
yeah, it was not a good time for the chimpanzees. They pushed their limits and they died.
Yeah. Yeah.
And dogs. There were dogs as well, right?
Yeah, they were dogs. They were killing dogs. Yeah, not good.
Science.
Yeah. But if we go back further, we can find there was a British engineer. And unfortunately for him, this Professor Ralph Benjamin, his work was classified because it was, made for the military. So he got no credit for his mouse that he made in the 1940s, which was basically, if you know these trackball mice, have you used these?
Where is that the one like you spin with your fingers yourself?
Yeah, the ball is on the top instead of on the bottom. I feel
like you use them when you go to a museum that hasn't been updated in a really long time.
Yeah, so this is kind of what he invented, but this is, functionally exactly the same as a normal mouse. It's just upside down kind of, and the ball is made not to roll on a table, but your hand. So this was otherwise what he made in the mid 1940s for the Royal Navy Scientific Service.
Ooh,
and
Britain representing here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And the comprehensive display system was the project he was working on for the Royal Navy, and it was just to the system was basically designed to look at monitoring aircraft and their trajectory and stuff, but they needed a good way, so they were using a joystick to sort of manipulate a cursor, and
so joystick predates mouse.
Yes. Yes, they did. And they also had something, they had a light pen, which I'm not even sure how the light pen exactly worked. I assume you just pointed it at something on the screen and then it picked it up or something. Or maybe actually, I think the light pen might have been on the table. Like you had some sort of a thing on the table and you went and pointed around. But I could be completely wrong. I've never actually seen one used.
It sounds super futuristic.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
Yeah. Have you tried the new Apple light pen?
Yeah, that's probably a thing at some point. But
they'd call it the iLight pencil, I'm sure.
yeah, that's good.
And they'd charge you $200 for it because,
Yeah, at least.
Because they can.
Yeah. So the joystick he thought was, ineffective to manipulating a cursor on a screen. So instead he came up with the roller ball, is what he called it. And it was just a trackball, basically. It worked. It had the two XY axis, wheels inside and then a ball sitting on top. And so these wheels were rubber coated and she just kind of manipulated around. It's exactly how the mechanical mice worked, before we had the laser and optical, all those, fancy mice. So this is exactly how it worked, except for, you used your hand on top instead of inverting it like I said. So, yeah, he got no credit for this, of course, because it was all classified, unfortunately for him. And so now we're moving over to Canada, where someone invented basically the exact same thing, only they used 4 wheels inside the trackball. And this was done on behalf of the Canadian Defense Research Board by a company, Ferranti Canada, in 1952. And I like the little quote they had from them. They were like, we did this basically on $0 budget. They had to be basically free to make this thing. So they went down and they literally bought like a bowling ball type thing, a 5-pin bowling ball to use as the ball. And then they used 4 wheels basically instead of the 2 that they didn't know someone else had invented already, because that was also classified. And so, so they just developed this thing. It worked exactly like Benjamin's device otherwise. And we have a picture of it that I'll put up on
It's pretty cool looking. It's like got a bowling ball in the middle.
Yeah, totally. And it worked great and also was classified. So nobody got heard of that one.
I also feel this feels like counterintuitive. Like, it was made for the Canadian Defense Research Board. And when I think about like defense research boards, I think like, we're going to invent a mouse. What's the budget? $1 billion.
Yeah. It's like, well, it was the company that they were hiring. So who knows the higher ups in the company, but like, we're going to take all the money as profit. You have to make up something that's basically free to make.
They had $1 billion, but we spent it on boats.
Yeah, exactly. Could have been. Who knows? But yeah, so this all brings us around back to Doug Engelbart, and the first mouse that actually, saw the light of day and gave us eventually the mouse that the mouse that everyone is used to using. So his mouse, interestingly, was a little bit different, and these trackball mices were in some ways a lot more similar to the mechanical mice, like I said, because his mouse, Engelbart's, didn't actually have a ball. It just had the little wheels, the little XY wheels, but you used it on the table, and so, but obviously this isn't ideal because as you're moving it along the table at like an angle or something, one of the little wheels is going to be dragging a little bit. It's not going to be super, it's not ideal. The ball version is way better. But at this point, that's what they came up with, Doug Engelbart, and then actually an engineer named Bill English actually implemented the hardware for it. So it was just Engelbart's idea. It was actually really Bill English that came up with the design, or I should say implemented the design of the thing. And this worked, okay. And so initially they did have the wheel, or the wire coming out the back, which is why he couldn't remember who first gave it the nickname the mouse, but that was kind of why it was called a mouse, because it looked like it had a little tail, and it was just little. Okay. I'll put the picture up as well of this first device, just like a little box looking thing for people.
Is that the wooden box thing?
Yeah, it's just a little wooden box, has a little button on it, quite basic, and there's a little tail coming out the back. Someone called it a mouse. He couldn't remember who first.
It's really nice looking.
It looks it's not very ergonomic, but No,
not it's just basically a cube, like a very cube-like rectangle. But I mean, the wood, it looks like one nice piece of wood. It looks very nicely
they
polished.
rounded the edges so it won't hurt your hands or whatever. So that works. He thought up the device in 1961, and then the prototype was created in 1964. And then, in 1966, both Engelbart and English, they approached NASA and just asked, they wanted to do a study. They needed funding for a study to look at the various controllers that were out there and see what was the most intuitive and efficient to, put their mouse up against, the light pen and stuff like that was around, joystick and things like this. And so they looked at it, and this is exactly what they found. So as Engelbart notes,
we set up our experiments, and the mouse won in every category, even though it had never been used before by the test subjects. It was faster, and with it, people made fewer mistakes. 5 or 6 of us were involved in these tests, but no one can remember who started calling it a mouse. I'm surprised the name stuck.
Yeah, and so they obviously did move the wire to the top because they had problems with people getting there, the cord tangled all the time when it was on the bottom, so they made it come out the top. That would be
frustrating.
Yeah, so that was a better design, so they did that. And this brings us back to as mentioned, the mother of all demos, which was at the Fall Joint Computer Conference in San Francisco on December 9th, 1968.
This is amazing.
1968. This is incredible.
68.
Yeah, so they have
moon landing. Well, that's bad because then it's like, whoa, we were landing on the moon at the same time. That's not a good example. I want to say what bad thing? 1968, Cold War. Again, that was
the Pet Rock. Maybe was that 1980s.
I feel that was 1980s. I remember seeing some color stuff or TV. Was color TV in the 19? No, they were black and white in the 1960s. Mostly.
I think it was the transition.
Okay.
Happened around then.
That's right, because I remember in Mad Men they were talking about how they got a color TV and it's like, ooh,
yeah,
fancy.
But the point was computers sucked, and so
generally everything was bad.
And you didn't have these personal computers. You had these giant mainframe computers that would heat a whole university building. And stuff. So and just no power whatsoever. And at this point and this time, with this networking capability, which wasn't much at the time, obviously they wouldn't have stuff networked that much, like we think of it today. And so they in one system, they go up there in this conference, and in front of it was, I think, over 1,000 computer engineers. They're demoing what they've come up with, and it's not just the mouse. The system that this group came up with. So I'm just gonna. Do you want to read the things on this?
Sure, why not? I'll do it. Hypertext video hypertext is where you have a link through a piece of
correct, where you can link and then it takes you to another document, which is just kind of the whole idea.
Hypertext video conferencing via a high-speed modem, so like Skype basically in 1968.
Probably a better version of it because Skype crashes every 2 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. They had the better version of Skype, 1968. Shared screens via a network where control could be passed back and forth. So essentially like remote desktop, right?
Yeah.
A form of windowed computing. I think we all know what that is.
Yeah, but 1968, again, a form of windowed computing, 1968.
I feel like Windows 3.0 is kind of the first Windows I really remember using. And this had Windows, because obviously it did. It's called, wow, that's why it's called Windows.
Yeah.
I'm just putting that all together. Okay, good.
Light bulb.
Yeah. So that's ahead of its time. Word processing, real-time digital text editing with multiple people able to edit files at the same time.
And let's also go back to that word processing, which doesn't sound impressive until you consider, like, why would you need a word processor no one's using a mainframe for like something like this, right? Like where you're just typing away, that's expensive computing time to just, a word processor, type up a document. I mean, like, it wasn't like no one was using, but it was like, this was quite a revolutionary idea. And then of course, the even more revolutionary idea over there with the
real-time text editing with multiple people able to edit files at the same time. I feel that they didn't get this sorted out until Google Drive got this together.
Yeah, with revision control as well, which is sort of like a Wikipedia type idea, networked, network. It was like multiple on a network could then edit like
Amazing.
This, so across. Yeah.
I just remember having my mind blown by this. Like before Google Drive, where you could edit two people could edit this file at the same time on Google. It had a different name. It was amazing. And I remember using this at the same time, being like, oh, I'm typing at the same time someone else on another computer somewhere else is.
Yeah.
And this was 1968.
Yeah. And this is, and they had various other forms of network collaboration. And this was so, I should go back also. They even though you didn't have personal computers, you didn't have PCs back then, but they were using it. A lot of the stuff they were demoing was for the future where they saw where people would have personal computers.
Right.
And so like they had, for instance, grocery lists. So like his wife could edit the grocery list from home. And then he could then, go and pick up the groceries from the store based on these edits. And he could add things to the list as well. And this was kind of his like little idea of when he's driving home or whatever.
Personal supercomputer? He was like, I am in the store. I do need book. Let me cross that off.
I assume he was thinking to print it out. I've actually watched this demo. You can go and watch the demo, but it has been like a year or two since I watched. So you can go on YouTube and watch this demo, and it's really cool. So I can't remember exactly. I assume he was thinking printing it off and then doing it that way, but I can't remember exactly. But anyone can go. I'll link to it in the description there because it was really cool to watch. And this was so revolutionary that he actually, when the presentation, a lot of people were like, well, he's a crackpot. And then he actually got chastised for this because, quite a famous computer scientist, Andries van Dam, he actually berated, he went up to him after the thing and said,
"It's irresponsible and unethical for you to show something you put together for a demo and pretend it actually works!" Exclamation point.
Yeah. And then Engelbart, he came back.
No, I told him, it's real. He just wouldn't believe it until he got to SRI and saw it for himself.
Yeah. And this is a thing at tech stuff all the time. People do like a demo of some really cool thing that only works in the demo. That actually happens all the time. So this is what a lot of people just assumed they were doing because there was so much that was quite revolutionary about this system they had developed. So yeah.
I love watching the tech demos on YouTube. Do you know it's like one that does graphics that it's called like Sigarograph or something? Have you seen these?
No, I haven't seen that one.
I'll send you a link after this, or it might not be Sigarograph, but if you Google Sigarograph tech demo, I'm sure you'll see it. And it's just like it's like experimental or like demos of computer graphics and what they'll look like. And it's just crazy. It's some of the stuff. I'm sure now I remember watching them a few years ago, being like, oh, wow, the physics are crazy. And now it's like, now we have that in Grand Theft Auto. But it's amazing to see what you'll have in a couple of years, just at the consumer level. Anyway.
Yeah, and so you'd think from this demo that it revolutionized everything, right? You have all these, over 1,000, top computer engineers looking at this, and then they all went back to their companies and made cool stuff, but that's not quite, I mean, to some extent, that would
Steve
eventually
Jobs
happen.
was there. He'd be like,
cool. Yeah, this was, we'll get to Steve Jobs in a little bit because he does play a role in this. So Engelbart's part in this, as well as English, is largely forgotten, over the subsequent years. And, the mouse kind of went into obscurity for a time. So this brings us back to Bill English, who's now working at Xerox, right? So he's there, and he's at a certain point, he improved upon his design to actually use a wheel inside, so the little XY, or I should say a ball inside, so the XY aren't scraping across. And so this works quite well, and it's just the way we all did it until like the late 1990s or so, early 2000s, when everyone transitioned to optical mice.
I remember this transition. I was at school.
It was so was I. Yeah.
Do you remember, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but those mice with those hard little rubber balls inside.
Yeah, it's
a bad time, like, because kids, we'd just take those out and throw them at each other. And then they glued them shut. And then they'd get all jammed up with glue and like bits because you couldn't clean them. And they were all
they would always get the stuff. This was the great thing is, so Counter-Strike came out, I don't know, right when I was like a freshman, and around that time. And this was the great thing is because I bought like a laser mouse and everyone else was still using the balled mouse. And so I was just like, headshot. And everyone was like, you're cheating. And it was like, no, laser mouse. It's awesome.
Upgrade, people.
Yeah. It's so superior for, that fine point aiming and whatnot. So it was great. But yeah, so this Xerox, going back to that and discussing Steve Jobs. Oh, Before I get into the Xerox thing, I should mention that so Ingobart and English, they worked for Stanford Research Institute when they came up with a lot of this stuff, including the mouse. And so unfortunately, not only did they not really get credit for the mouse, invention for quite some time, but they also didn't really earn any money from it other than their salary from Stanford, because Stanford owned the patent. And Stanford did profit from Apple, for instance, paid them $40,000 or $130,000 today to use the mouse. And then, of course, the mouse, the patent expired in 1984. So that was that right when this is. So we have Steve Jobs coming on the scene, and he decides to give Apple some share, or Xerox some shares of Apple shares in 1979 if he can go tour Xerox Palo Alto Research Center Park and just go look and see what they're working on. And so they agreed. And this is where he came across Bill English, who is now working there, and his mechanical mouse with the ball and everything. And Jobs saw this thing and was just, he was just blown away by it. And according to the engineer who demonstrated the mouse to Jobs, there was a guy by the name of Larry Tesler, Jobs said,
Jobs was very excited. Then when he began seeing the things I could do on screen, he watched for about a minute and started jumping around the room shouting, "Why aren't you doing anything with this? This is the greatest thing. This is revolutionary."
Yeah, and it turns out, this is the funny part. So a lot of people think they weren't doing anything, but it turns out they were doing something with this, just nobody noticed. So the Xerox had their Alto that had the they'd been selling this since 1973 with the trackball mouse, and later they did it also with the Xerox 8010 system, and that was released in 1981. And so they were doing something with the mouse, and it just was like nobody noticed. And this is a thing like Xerox, as actually Jobs himself would know.
If Xerox had known what it had and had taken advantage of its real opportunities, it could have been as big as IBM plus Microsoft plus Xerox combined, and the largest high-technology computer company in the world.
Yeah, so they had these windowed systems and stuff that he was, this was kind of another thing he saw there, and the mouse and everything. They had it all right there in the research center, so much of what would become revolutionary, and they just did nothing with it really, or at least didn't market it well enough for anyone to notice. And this let others like Jobs and
I feel like
Bill
I need
Gates
to go tour around some research facilities.
Yeah, there's always cool stuff.
Yeah, come look at all of our secret stuff, or that stuff that should be secret that we're working on.
I think that works better when you're like a billionaire.
Was he a billionaire at this point? 70.
No, he would not have been, because that was Pixar was when he became a big billionaire, was when he
that's right.
The Toy Story, when that blew up. So that after he screwed all his employees out of their shares of that, but whatever.
Wait, wasn't that the second time he became a billionaire? Didn't he do it from...
I think that was the first time.
Okay.
Because he did that because he had to, Pixar kind of went bankrupt a little bit, and so he took all the shares, but then like almost immediately, very quickly after, I should say. So he just canceled that company, made a new company, but now he owned everything, and then then Toy Story comes out, and then that was...
Wasn't it also called Pixar?
I think so.
He didn't even change the name.
Yeah, it was, but yeah, that worked out for him. I mean, to be fair, he was dumping a lot of money into that company, and it was just going downhill fast, and he just continued to pump money into it. So, he does have that going.
He felt this was fair.
Yeah, and,
Maybe it wasn't. But, maybe it was. Maybe it was.
Yeah. But yeah, so as Jobs then goes back to his company, Apple, and he says,
all right, now. What?
Yeah, he was. He was like, all right, the next iteration of this PC we're making, it has to be now. We're going to make it a Windows-based system, just kind of modeling after what he saw on Xerox, and it also has to have a mouse. And then so the Dean Hovey, who was working there, he said Jobs explained to him later that week.
The Xerox mouse is a mouse that costs $300 to build and it breaks within 2 weeks. Here's your design spec. Our mouse needs to be manufacturable for less than $15, which is about $50 today. It needs to not fail for a couple of years, and I want to be able to use it on Formica and my blue jeans. What's Formica? It's like a type of surface, like a kitchen surface or something?
Yes. Oh. Laminate countertops.
Boom!
Some sort of
really?
a plastic. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a good, solid guess.
Yeah. Although, is it for mica? I feel like I've heard people say
I asked
Formica.
because I was like, I had no idea if I'm saying that right.
Yeah,
so.
I could be completely saying that wrong as well. I don't really know. But so then Hovey then explained.
He said, from that meeting, I went to Walgreens and I wandered around and bought all the underarm deodorants that I could find because they had that ball in them. I bought a butter dish for the body of the mouse. That was the beginnings of the Apple mouse.
Yeah, and so then you also might be wondering why. So the original mouse, these original ones had like 3 buttons because this was what Engelbart and they determined was the ideal number of buttons on the mouse to be useful and for what different things you could do. And so, but the 1 button, so Hovey stated of this.
There were disputes around the number of buttons, 3 buttons, 2 buttons, 1 button mouse. The mouse at Xerox had 3 buttons, but we came around to the fact that learning to use a mouse is a feat in and of itself. And to make it as simple as possible with just 1 button was pretty important.
Yeah. So they ended up debuting it with the Apple Lisa system, which was not super well known, I don't think, today. But yeah, this was named after Jobs' daughter, who he denied was his daughter for quite some time.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And then even though he was naming his system after her, and her and her mother were living in poverty, whatever.
Yep. I remember this from Walter Isaacson's book.
Yeah. But anyways. So yeah, the first one used a steel ball, which turned out to be not as good as
that would be terrible for school.
Yeah. On like a smooth surface, it wasn't ideal.
Oh, I meant throwing at each other.
Oh yeah, that would be even worse. That would be even worse. But yeah, so they switched it to rubber ball, obviously, on the Apple Macintosh that was released in 1984. And yeah, so this ended up being how it all, became.
And, by the way, for our younger listeners, this was not like a gentle rubber ball that you'd get from one of those vending machines. This thing was like, there was metal in there. Yeah, it was just wrapped in rubber.
It had some good mass because it had to. If it didn't, then it wouldn't, it would just slide across the surface. It needed some weight to it to make it all work good.
It hurt if you got hit by one of these. Like, really, really hurts.
And so this gave us the mouse, and then everyone, of course, adopted that, and the Windows system and all that came. And yeah, then we had everyone keeps saying the mouse is going away because we have all the touch interfaces and everything, and it's true to some extent, but the mouse is still going strong for a lot of uses. People haven't figured a good way to replace it yet.
Mouse is pretty ultra precise. Like,
but yeah,
I like that.
Where your finger is not, and also pens don't work.
So you've got one of those Microsoft Surface Touch.
Yes, I do. The Surface Book 2. Yep.
Yeah. When you're using that and you want to like sit down and do some work that requires finer like touching, like, I always think like Premiere. The play button in Premiere is tiny. Like if you use the spacebar mostly, but you do occasionally use the mouse. Do you switch to a mouse, or are you touching the screen on that thing?
No, I usually use it in the laptop mode, which is what it's great. But it also then you can just pop off the screen, and then you can use your fingers, and you can put it in tablet mode, or you can also use the pen, obviously for drawing and things like that for ultra fine stuff. So yeah, it's just kind of versatile both ways.
But when you're in laptop mode, I shouldn't say mouse, I should say trackpad. You're using the trackpad.
I usually do because I'm quite proficient at it. I know some people don't like to just have. Some people like to just have the mouse. But the trackpad works. You can get pretty good at it.
Trackpad's solid.
Yeah.
Like I've trackpad at work and then on my laptop, trackpad on the laptop and then mice at work. Trackpad's great. Got no issues with trackpad. Yeah. And the swiping and the scrolling, and on Mac at least you do. I'm sure you get the multi-touch gestures or whatever, so you can like minority report stuff to the side. Like
it's like a nice hybrid between the mouse and the touch interface.
Cool.
Basically.
Is that the mouse?
That's the end of the story of the mouse and the poor British guy who gets no credit. and I can't even remember his name now.
He was a professor, wasn't he? Or was that Dvorak?
Oh, see, look at this. He's already obscure.
It wasn't Bill English. He has a very easy to remember name.
Wait for it.
Find him. Give him credit. He worked for the Royal Navy.
Professor Ralph Benjamin.
I knew he was a professor.
Yes, he was. Okay. He was the first, truthfully. But yeah, his invention was top secret.
And in this episode, we salute you, Professor Benjamin.
Yeah.
Should we do a bit of feedback and discussion and then wrap it up?
A little special announcement after.
Oh, we do have a special announcement. That's right. How exciting. Well, we'll see where that goes. Someone emailed in, and I always feel with email I don't mention people's names, but if you wrote this email, you'll know who they are. I just thought this was quite fun because we've talked about it previously. Someone says, Brainfood is my first favorite and only podcast. And I use y'all's video to fall asleep every night. And then I know we've discussed this before about whether it's a good thing or not. And the person specifically says, in a good way, I watch them while awake too. I like this very specific follow-up that people give us because they know things we've brought up before. And then this bit I loved. You and David are absolute kings, all caps, and I would defend you both with my life if there was an apocalypse. That's a very nice compliment and very specific.
That is quite nice.
Then they say, have a blessed day, and please consider doing 8+ hour podcasts with David, even though you'll explained why you wouldn't. Yes.
Oh, no.
This one's quite long. So, I mean, nowhere near 8 hours, but...
The 1 hour ones take enough time.
Yes, they do. Shall we do some... I didn't really have any other follow-up. Should I have... Yeah. I don't think we released the previous episode when we're recording this one because we're pushing them quite close together right now, just because we're busy. I'm going to hit some reviews and then do an announcement and then wrap up. How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Username, good Lord, FBDHDHX. That's nothing. I don't think, is it something?
No.
Blah, blah, blah. This show is so good. I will go back and re-listen to. I've got to stop making fun of the people who give us great reviews. I know I've said this in 8 episodes, but I will. I will learn how to do it. This show is so good, I will go back and re-listen to older episodes. Each listen contains a new fact I didn't hear before, and the bonus facts are the best. I work them into my job, so every day my colleagues get a message with a bonus fact from your show. It's a great conversation starter and a way for you to look smarter in front of all your friends. I realize we might have a marketing problem. Do you know what our marketing problem is?
No.
So people love our show, but they also love appearing smart in front of their friends.
Oh, yeah.
So they'll never tell. They'll be like, where did you read that? Scientific American?
Well, this is actually the problem. If you look at so as we've discussed before, whatever 85% of the audience is male, and men don't share stuff that they like.
That's true.
If you really love, so you just don't tell anyone. And whereas women, if they find something they love, they're just go to their friends and they tell them all about it. And so you see this things rapidly become popular there, but the men are just and they just, like you say, just say the fact, where they got it, or
yeah, we're doing okay. We're growing, which is good.
Yeah,
I like that. Thanos47 says, love the podcast, 5 stars. Been listening to your podcast for a while now, and I love the format and the banter between you guys. I also really like the love. Cool. How much you and David like Star Trek and the fun bits of trivia you add into the podcast. Keep up the great podcast. Sorry to disappoint you on the Data's brain facts today, because that was a good Star Trek.
It was, but unfortunately it was from several years ago when I actually looked up the data, and then we didn't have a lot of time before recording to fix it. And I couldn't find any data on how much people download from the internet every day, or I should say any reputable data in the short time I had. So I had to swap out to a different quick fact.
Someday, maybe we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But we'll have more Star Trek facts in the future. Finally, last one I'm just going to do. Love these guys, 5 stars by Amy176. Excellent. Just excellent. Oh, and then an update. I didn't know you could update reviews. Hey, now we get to... Hey, 1-star review who says you hate us. Do you want to update that?
Yeah.
No, probably not. I like the new format, and the show has been following clear segments, short facts, follow-ups, the main content, and reviews. They still come together cohesively in fun and fascinating ways. I'm glad about that, because we changed this show format many times. So I think we're finally evolving towards, or we're starting to evolve towards a format that people are starting to dig. I have also been enjoying the multi-episode themes. That's also a relatively new thing, so that's good. Especially the macabre parts. I'm assuming Amy's a girl.
Yeah.
Or I should say a woman rather than a girl.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, macabre and women, which we talked about in the previous episode.
We just got to do more of that, I think.
Wow.
Get the ratio better.
Love it. To the podcast team, keep up the excellent work. To potential listeners, definitely give this one a try. You won't be disappointed. That's cool. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Amy, Thanos, and blah, blah, blah. You left great reviews. That was the first guy. FBHDH8. So I can't even read it. So this last bit, I do want to preface this by, don't get any ideas, everyone. This was a one thing that we thought was really nice, but please don't send in requests for this every week.
Because unless you're a rocket scientist also, because this person is a rocket scientist.
It's super specific, yeah.
We love our rocket scientists here.
So how this is, when we were doing the space series, we had our aerospace engineer, our rocket scientist, email in. And we just thought it'd be fun to pass on a message that he has to one Elizabeth. Do you think that's Petrie? Elizabeth Petrie? Petrie.
Elizabeth Petrie.
Petrie. Thank you. Oh, look, it's written right there phonetically for me. That's handy. It's just on the next slide, so I couldn't see it. Yeah. He says, your hopeless nerd of a rocket scientist boyfriend, Rob. Okay, so over to Rob. There we go.
Lizzie, you're the kindest, most intelligent, most beautiful person in the world. This big nerd has come a long way from that first date at the room, and I want to continue loving, learning from, and growing with you. I know my voice isn't as suave as Simon Whistler's, but I wanted to ask you from the bottom of my heart, Elizabeth Petrie, will you marry me?
All right, so there you go. That's not something we're going to be doing every week. Please don't write in, but I thought it would be fun specifically to do this for Rob. So there you go. I hope that was good. And
if you're like an astronaut or something and you want to, one up Rob, then we could probably do something.
Or a rocket scientist, brain surgeon, maybe.
Yeah.
Have you seen that Mitchell and Webb clip? This is one of my
rocket
favorite.
Surgeon.
What about the guy who does brain surgery in space?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a thing. Yeah. So feel free to one up Rob if you want. Are we wrapping it there for today?
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent. We'll see you all next week for another computer-themed thing. We have no names for this yet, so it's going to have a name by the time you've heard this. There'll be all of that stuff. We'll see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for listening. Check out Backblaze. Just go to backblaze.com/brainfood to check that out. Unlimited backup, truly unlimited backup.
And
as we
super
discussed.
easy. It takes zero. You just install it and then it just does its thing. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to know anything, really.
Easy. That's where we're going to end it. See you all next week. Cool. I was really worried because I've got a lot of xylophone talk planned for later in this episode.